The Boston Red Sox are currently a game and a half out of the last wild card spot. What are going to be the biggest keys for them to make a run this year?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. For those of you who are everydayers, you are all too familiar with that intro song. It means that the show is here. I am your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate, and also the current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it's free, so you really have nothing to lose but to check it out because we are fun on this show, and Locked On is your team every single day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome to today's show. And luckily for me and the case of my show, the Red Sox have been playing pretty good baseball this year. Started off a little bit rough this season, but then really started to click around early June and then came out slow out of the gates out of the All-Star break, but seemingly have started to turn things around here now too and get back to playing good baseball. And I have a big guest with me on today's show who's going to talk all about this Red Sox team this year. He does the Red Sox pre and post game shows for WEEI, and Joe Weil. How are you doing today?
Gabby, thank you so much for having me. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I think it's a great time to be doing this because the Red Sox are coming off of a big series win against a Royals team that they have been watching all season long in the wild card race, trying to get past this team and make that playoff push. And one of the biggest things for me that I even talked about at the beginning of the season was this offense is going to be able to hit. They're going to be able to score runs. And the question is going to be, can the pitching keep up with that in order to make them a contending team? So from your perspective, what would you say are the biggest keys for this Red Sox team in order to make a serious playoff push this year?
Well, you hit on one of the things. Their offense needs to continue to do what they have been doing since the All-Star break. And this offense, I feel like, is very underrated when people talk about the best offenses in Major League Baseball. Like, they have an argument. I'm not going to say the best offense, but I think there's an argument to be made that they're maybe the best all-around offense. When you think about where they rank in average on-base and slugging percentage, they're like right toward the top. And then you think about the fact that they can steal bases as well. Like, there's just so many things dynamically that they can do. They hit for a lot of doubles. I think it's still the most in Major League Baseball, last I checked. So it's remarkable the way they've been able to swing it, especially since the All-Star break. And considering the fact that they've been able to do all this, as you know, Gabby, without Trevor Story since that first road trip of the year, and without Tristan Casas, for such a long time now, we're like almost nearing 4 months of no Tristan Casas. So that part of it is also pretty crazy. But the fact that they've been able to do this is remarkable. I think the biggest key from, the perspective of, okay, what's their deficiency right now? It's actually their starting pitching, right? And I think you could also make an argument that it's the infield defense as well. But starting pitching is the part of this team that was such a question mark coming into the year. And then they overperformed in the month of April. They had an ERA of 2 right at the end of April. It was best in Major League Baseball. But every month since then, it's gotten worse and worse in terms of that ERA number. And you think about where all these guys are at in terms of their innings, especially pitchers like Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford. And, you worry about it with Brian Bayo too. James Paxton too. As much as I like the fact that they traded for James Paxton, one thing to note is that now he's eclipsed over 100 innings. It's the first time he's done that since 2019 when he was with the Yankees. And now you have Nick Pivetta getting skipped to start here because, as we saw in his start against the Rangers, the velocity was down across the board. And that was sort of telling that maybe he was not quite, at the best he could be. So to me, the biggest question mark, and I think the key down the stretch is going to be that starting pitching. And will they have enough to make it to the finish line, which is hopefully them being in a playoff spot, right at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You talk about the starting pitching, and I actually did have pitching coach Andrew Bailey on the show, and he talked a little bit about the starting pitching and the approach they're using, and the guys having to really stick with what they know and stick with their identity and utilize the pitches that are best for them. And it's interesting with somebody like Brian Bayo, because we saw a lot out of him last year, lots of potential from him, and he definitely has had his struggles this year. And Tanner Houck, who has struggled as of late and was phenomenal in the first half of the season. So from your perspective, when you look at the starting pitching right now, do you think Craig Breslow dropped a ball by not trading for a front end starter at this trade deadline? Because there was a lot of talk about, is that a piece that the Red Sox need right now to make a push, or did it not make sense because it would have been really expensive to get that caliber of a starter right now, with the Red Sox still also trying to focus on their future?
Yeah, and I think that's the key part of it, Gabby, that the fact that they're still trying to focus on their future. And I thought Craig Breslow actually did a pretty good job straddling that line of still focusing on the future, but adding pieces to this year's team that are going to help. And I think that's where Chaim Bloom dropped the ball the last couple of years, because, last year especially, they were begging. You had Rafael Devers and Kenley Jansen begging this team to add at the trade deadline, and then they didn't really do that. And especially for parts of the team that they really needed help, namely being that the starting pitching. Like, at the very least, they got James Paxton. And to me, I saw that as like a bare minimum move. Like, can you at least get us this? And then Craig Breslow ended up doing that. And, I thought the prospects he gave away too, I thought he did a good job of shipping guys that were either going to have Rule 5 eligibility coming up, or guys that just frankly didn't matter in terms of the cream of the crop prospects within the organization. Like, would you love to have a Nick York in your organization? Yeah, but if you're going to trade, and get a pitching piece back like Quinn Priester, who they've liked now for a bit, and then on top of that, he's a young guy, controllable starter. Maybe you mix or you tweak some stuff in terms of the arsenal, and he becomes the pitcher that you hope that he can be. But that was an organizational need. So in terms of letting the team down or dropping the ball at the trade deadline, I have a hard time looking at what Craig Breslow did and saying, wow, he really dropped the ball there, because it was clearly it was a seller's market in the sense that you had to give up a lot to get a piece that was actually going to be helpful. I think the one guy everybody was looking at was Jack Flaherty. We'll see how he holds up down the stretch, because the Yankees, they were actually a little concerned about the injury stuff there, and they don't end up getting a deal done with him. I know one guy that I mean, you look at like a Tarek Skubal, that's somebody I would have been very intrigued about going to ship one of the big three out to get, just because he's already one of the best pitchers in baseball, and it's a need that you have. But that may have required two of the big three, or who knows? The Tigers could have been asking for so much there, and that may have been a non-starter in terms of the amount of talent that the Red Sox would have to give up to get somebody like him. We saw with Yusei Kikuchi, he's looked pretty good with the Astros, but they had to deal a lot to get him. And so I think Craig Breslow actually did a pretty good job of straddling that line in terms of organizational needs for now and the future. But to me, Gabby, I think the biggest thing when it comes to the starting pitching conversation is still the lack of action in that offseason. Because we can sit here and talk about how, Jordan Montgomery has not had a good season with the Diamondbacks, or Blake Snell, I know you just throw a no-hitter, but it's not as if he's lighting the world on fire with the Giants either. But to me, that's all but the butterfly effect, right? So that was the reality of the situation. They get into spring training late, and then they've had these seasons that they've had where you could have still done something in the offseason, and things could have been completely different, especially with how good this pitching infrastructure has already showed itself to be. So to me, that's still the lingering question of the season is does that still, bite them in the end, as we continue to go along here, and especially in this August stretch that's coming up with 27 games in 27 days, with a lot of good teams until you get to the end of the month and you finally, hopefully, get a breather against the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, it's interesting too because the Red Sox were in a interesting spot because a lot of people didn't expect them to be performing at the level they're performing at this year. They're kind of a little bit ahead of schedule, I think, according to what a lot of people thought from where they would be at, especially with all the injuries this year. So for a while, it was looking like the Red Sox were just going to be sellers at the trade deadline. And what I really appreciated about Breslow is that he picked a lane. He didn't try to be half in and half out, kind of like we've seen the last couple of years at the trade deadline. He said, we are going to look to improve the team. And that's what he did. And yes, he gave up a lot of good talent in the system for it, but it showed that he believes in this team. And even with Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia, guys who can impact the team now, even though they're going to be free agents and these are rentals to them for right now, he gave up talent for them, but it goes to show that he wanted to show that he believes in this team. And I think that's huge. And I think it's really big for Alex Cora too, because I don't think it's a coincidence that the same day that Alex Cora signed that extension was the same day that Breslow was like, we're going to look to improve the team at the deadline. I think there definitely had to be some promise there in order for Cora to stay. But I really like just the overall attitude this team has and wanting to win and just wanting to grind out these games. And I think that's something that's going to get them very far. So coming up next, we're going to be talking a little bit about players who have stepped up this year for the Red Sox that you might not have expected to step up in the way that they are. But first, I have to give a shout out to Liquid IV, which honestly is an absolute lifesaver. I know for me, I have a lot of trouble staying hydrated, especially in the summer, and I start to feel sick if I'm not drinking enough water. Those of you watching this on YouTube, you can see that Joe just reached for his water, which we all need to drink more of, but you can actually use Liquid IV to help yourself stay hydrated on top of your all-important water in the summer. And what's great about it is it's a hydration that also has a lot of different fun flavors like pina colada flavor, raspberry, tart cherry, lemon lime, so many different flavors for you to choose from. And all you have to do is get 20% off your first order if you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. I promise you this stuff is an absolute lifesaver, especially after a night out or something along those lines. So definitely check it out today because it will absolutely be useful for you. And you should also head to eBay Motors for all of your car part needs. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I promise you, any resource that can help with your car is a lifesaver for somebody like me who doesn't really know much about cars. So check that out today as well. I am here with Joe Weil, Red Sox pre and post game host on WEEI, and we're talking a lot about this team that has actually been a bit of a surprise for some, I think, this year in terms of their performance. So when you look at this team as a whole, you have somebody like Masataka Yoshida who had a slow start to the season and has really turned things on in this second half at the plate. You have guys like David Hamilton, Wilyer Abreu, some of the younger players who are starting to develop and really formulate their role on this team. Cedar Rafaela, another one. So in your opinion, Joe, who are some of the players on this Red Sox team that are stepping up a little bit more than you expected them to this year?
Yeah, I think it's probably a longer list than anybody anticipated coming into this year. it's been a ton of guys. I mean, I'm just so impressed with the way the rookies have performed this year. I think Wilyer Abreu is probably close to on par for what we would hope he was going to do based on the small sample size that we had last year. But the fact that he leads all rookies in slugging percentage is a testament to the player that he's become now. And that game he had, obviously, in Texas on Sunday was so special, considering the circumstances surrounding his grandmother. But I think it's a long list. So, like, you have Wilyer, who's having a great season. Cedar Rafaela, I was hoping he'd be a good player. And I saw the tools, especially the defensive tools, coming into this year, and we're high on them. I think what I'm so impressed by about him is twofold. I mean, the run production at the plate, the fact that he can drive in so many guys is a testament to what he can do offensively. And we've seen the power from him as well. And, when he hits home runs, the Red Sox win. That's just how it goes here in 2024. But I think on top of that, the fact that he's been able to fill in two defensive spots, and it's not just like any defensive spots. It's the parts of a baseball team that you, as an architect of a team, would want to like think about in terms of building it out defensively. Center field, shortstop, and the fact that he's so good in center field. I mean, that he made that great play against the Royals, and he actually made a couple of them. There was that one he went in on that was actually a harder, catch probability, whatever that means to people listening. Nuts. Yeah, like that was crazy. And I know people made a bigger deal about the one he went back to make the catch and did like the kind of the backhanded grab, which he just said he just didn't have a good beat on initially. He's amazing out there. And then shortstop, they just needed him to step up and be that guy that can at least hold down that spot competently because of the Trevor Story injury. And to think that you're asking a rookie to do that and that he hasn't succumbed to the pressure is pretty remarkable. And then on top of that, as I'm sure Red Sox fans love, he's shown himself to be a Yankee killer. Like, he's played well against the Yankees. That part's been, I think, nice for everybody to see. In terms of the other players on this roster, though, again, like David Hamilton, another rookie, I think people here were kind of done with him after, a small sample size last year where he didn't do a whole lot. And then at the beginning of this, the season, he didn't look great. There was that game where he made the error in Anaheim, and then he was able to hit a home run, his first career home run. But even after that, I don't know if people thought he was going to necessarily step up. He's been awesome. And I think he's a big part of the identity of this team too. The fact that, that they've become such an athletic team that can run the bases and take extra bases. He's a part of that. I think, but I think I'm probably missing the guy that is the story of the season too, and Jarren Duran, right? I think last year he clearly showed that he was a major league player and a good major league player, because what impressed me about last year and his performance was he started off so hot when he got called up to the big leagues. Started the year in Worcester, obviously, but then he got called up and would, just shot out of a cannon. Like, he was amazing. Then he hit a real lull. And I think people kind of forget that. Like, he slumped for a pretty sizable amount of time last year, but then he adjusted back and then went on a tear. Obviously, he gets hurt toward the end of the season, and then that kind of ends the season. But thank goodness this team did not trade him for a pitcher in the offseason, because he has not only become their best player this year. I know there's probably an argument between him and Devers, but if you look at like wins above replacement, Duran wins that. And then on top of that, I think he's really become the identity of the team. Like Alex Cora saying when, he gets when he's telling everybody who the All-Stars are going to be in the clubhouse. And he basically says, like, this guy is like what everybody should, like everybody's kid should aspire to be, as a Major League Baseball player. We had Cooper Criswell on in postgame, and I remember our guys were talking to him, and he basically said he told Jarren that same thing. So he's really become, I think, in some ways the face of the organization. I think it's him and Devers, for the most part, but his ascension has become such a big part of this Red Sox season. And I think this isn't a hot take, it's the most obvious thing to state, but it's the reality. They wouldn't be where they are without Jarren Duran having this unreal year where he's doing so much from a power, the speed, more so a speed perspective, but gap to gap ability, doubles, triples, and then the home runs as well. And the fact that he's playing every day too is pretty remarkable. So I think there's a lot of unsung heroes on this team, and that's what's really fun about it. Like, Gabby, I know the hope is that we go into seasons and not have to say, if this goes right, if this, and this goes right, they're going to be a real playoff contender. However, I think there's something to be said about rooting for a team where you are surprised, and the fact that we're into the month of August and really excited about this team is a testament to how many guys have been able to step up this year.
Yeah, I mean, Jaren Duran's just so fun, and the fact that he won All-Star Game MVP just solidified the season that he's really having right now. Him being the hero in that game on such a big stage like that was super cool. And, it's a good mix of young guys who are trying to find their identity with this team and are just hungry to win, and veterans who, have been around for a while, like Kenley Jansen, Chris Martin, guys like that, who, just know what it's like to be part of a winning team. Yeah. And I think that's cool for these younger players to have guys like that in the clubhouse. And I think somebody too who really has stepped up recently, even though he knows that his position on this team likely is going to be ending soon, is Dom Smith. I think, we talk a lot about like Casas and him being gone. And, that whole stabbing situation was crazy when he was talking about his pain and Alex Cora was like, he's fine. So that was a little odd. But obviously we've all been anticipating and excited for Casas's return. But in the meantime, Dom Smith definitely deserves a ton of credit for the way he's been able to step up and just go out there and play good baseball, even though he knows the situation.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really interesting, situation for the Red Sox to figure out what they want to do with their roster. But you're totally right. And I love, there's two parts of the story that I love. It's the part about him embracing Boston. I had a chance to have him on for like a pregame show, and he's talked about this with other people as well. But, he just, when I asked him about what it's been like to, play at Fenway Park and be a part of this organization, he speaks about it with such a joy, like he very much relishes the opportunity to be here, thankful for it, right? That he's had an opportunity to play with the Red Sox. And I think in some ways kind of reestablish himself as a major league player. I'm curious to see where his career ends up going from here. But, he's been a guy that the clubhouse clearly loves. And the city has embraced him back. And that was kind of the second part of it. It's like, you see it in Red Sox Twitter, it's like, people love Dom Smith and they'll make jokes about it, but it's also like in real love and like in enjoyment from the fan perspective of here's this guy that has really kind of filled this important void for this team. And there's that poster I'm sure you saw of like, he's not the first baseman. He's the first baseman who stepped up. It was a Red Sox fan named Tyler who created that. I mean, it's brilliant. And I love that. And I think that's what's made this story really fun is like both sides. It's been a good marriage for the time being. The question now becomes, what do the Red Sox do when Casas comes back?
I know it'll be a tough decision for them. And obviously Casas ultimately is the first baseman of the future. So it would be tough to part ways with Dom. I just love his attitude and I just love what he brings to this team. And the fact that, people really have enjoyed having him here and he's really embracing the whole Boston experience. And it will definitely be tough, I think, for the Red Sox to say, hey, you're no longer needed, essentially. But I am also looking forward to Casas returning. That'll be a huge addition to this Red Sox lineup as they continue to navigate their way to a playoff spot. But coming up, we're going to be talking quickly about just a few roster moves the Red Sox made on Wednesday as they were pretty busy there, got a key reliever back from the injured list finally. So going to be touching on that quickly next. But first, if you're looking for a fun way to play daily fantasy sports, check out PrizePicks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers, and you can literally turn $10 into $1,000 as you can win 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And what's cool about PrizePicks is it's offered in more than 30 states across the country, and it allows you to really make different picks on different sports. And with the Olympics going on right now, it's a lot of fun and a good opportunity to win tons of money. Just download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. It's PrizePicks. I mean, easy ways to win money while making fun picks on the sports. I mean, a great combination, really. So you should definitely check that out today. I am here with Joe Weil from WEEI, Red Sox pre and post game host. And as we look ahead to the rest of the Red Sox season and just the way that they've been able to just surprise people this year with their performance and just their overall attitudes. They were busy on Wednesday in terms of roster moves. They finally reinstated Chris Martin from the injured list. They optioned left-handed pitcher Cam Boozer down to Worcester, who's 2-2 with a 2.77 ERA this season. They also had to place Tyler O'Neill on the 10-day IL with a leg infection and recalled Manuel Valdez from Worcester in the meantime. So pretty busy there. But with this Tyler O'Neill situation, I mean, this to me was a little bit strange because they didn't have him play in this previous series, but they were talking about him not feeling well. And then now he's placed on the injured list. So what exactly do you think kind of happened there?
That's a good question. And I wish I could give you more information on what I think specifically happened. I think the biggest thing, Gabby, is like you hope to have him back because he's such a big right-handed bat for this lineup, you know. And I think we were talking about the offense before and, you know, what they've been able to do, especially since the All-Star break. The one part of their offensive equation that you worry about a little bit is like how they handle left-handed pitching. And I thought it was maybe a little overblown, the need for like a right-handed bat, just because that the offense has still been pretty good. But they are now 14-21 in games against left-handed starters after last night, even though you had Romy Gonzalez hit that bomb against Reagan's. Tyler O'Neill just mashes left-handed pitching. And one of the best power hitters against left-handed pitching this year. And just to have that balance of him in the lineup does help you out. And to not have him for a little bit in what is such an important stretch is definitely a little concerning for this team. That again, it seems as though at least for the time being, and maybe the rest of the way, offense might have to lead the way with where the starting rotation's at. But I saw that. I like you and everybody else. I saw that yesterday, and that was certainly a tough blow for the team to not have him. Now for what they've, this stretch of time in which they've had it. I'm just pulling up what Alex Cora said. He said, Tyler said, Alex, I have no idea what happened. He said, when the trainers saw him in Texas, he was in bad shape. And then the last day, his leg was huge. So, maybe it was something that did really kind of just like unfold very quickly and recently that they then had to make the move. I know because he was sick for a couple of days and they were thinking, okay, no need to put him on the IL. He'll deal with that and then he'll come back. But now this seems like a thing that they obviously need to give him a little IL stint and, hopefully he'll come back better and hopefully that leg will be okay.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a surprise. I was like, this seems kind of sudden. And this is what bothers me about the Red Sox sometimes is when they're not completely transparent about injuries. Like the Tristan Casas situation has just been a big mystery for a while. And there's been a lot of confusion about his timeline and where he was at really over the last few months. So that's been a bit of a frustrating situation too.
Well, and that's where the whole confusion kind of came into play, right? Because we had, you'd seen reports out there that, okay, maybe Casas will come back in September. And then you're thinking, okay, but then all of a sudden they say, okay, no, he's going to start rehabbing in Worcester. So then when you heard the comment he made to Laura Stickles about of the Woo Sox Nesson broadcast about like the stabbing feeling, that's where it was like, okay, well, why is he playing? And then the more clarity comes about of that was a little overblown and Alex Cora, it was very interesting to hear his comments about Tristan Casas and the real frustration that I think he felt of like, hey, we need to be on the same page here when we're giving updates. And you saying something like that is going to, obviously make people like, react the way that they did, which I think was fair from the perspective of everybody reacting, because you see a quote like that and you're like, my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Sounds painful.
I was like, geez, dude, like what is happening here?
It sounds like there's still some pain there, but it's like one that like if he continues to work through it, he'll be okay. That it seems manageable and all of that. So I totally hear you. And the Costas thing has just been, I think there's been Costas's perspective of wanting to accelerate it, get back to playing, which you totally understand. There's some contract stuff out there as well that like is maybe part of the backdrop of that because, that there was the extension talks and, he's obviously betting on himself, which I think is smart, but he wants to get back out there and play. But yeah, that part of it's been confusing. And yeah, like the Tyler O'Neill thing, that was definitely surprising because you just thought it was going to be a couple days. And then, you get something, you hear a quote like I just told you before about what he said. He said, we're just like it was the last day his leg was huge. So, hopefully that gets taken care of. And again, they need his bat because when you get a strong Tyler O'Neill stretch, it can be game changing and maybe like week changing. He's almost, I was comparing him once on the radio to, I'm not saying that they're the same player, but it's kind of similar to Adam Duvall. Like last year where if you got a hot Adam Duvall stretch, like that could really change things for like a week, but there's some swing and miss in his profile, just like Adam Duvall's. And when you get the flip side of it and he's not swinging it all that well, it does hurt you. And especially with his case, I mean, he's just hit so many solo home runs to like the runners and scoring position part of it. But yeah, hopefully he's okay. Cause like, again, like this team, I think it should be done for the season with like weird injury related things. Like you had like the first couple of weeks, it was like just knockout after knockout. You even had the like spring training too with Vaughn Grissom and people forget it at this, and I sometimes forget it, and then I have to remember it. Like this team was supposed to have Lucas Giolito, who was like an innings eater. That was the thing. When they signed him, you're like, okay, at least he's going to eat up innings for this rotation, and then he doesn't pitch at all this year. So. But hopefully they get Liam Hendricks back. Hopefully that bullpen gets, stronger. And again, hopefully we get Tyler O'Neill back soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the bullpen getting stronger. I mean, Chris Martin being back is a huge re-addition to this bullpen here, and he certainly will help make a difference down the stretch. So him coming back now for what you mentioned before is a very important stretch for the Red Sox, I feel is huge for this bullpen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's such a big part of what they do. And when he's on and grooving, I mean, we saw that huge stretch last year, and I thought this year he's been pitched pretty well after some blips earlier in the season, and their bullpen is a massive strength, and that's where you look at the rotation and the concerns there. It's not to say you shouldn't be concerned, especially about maybe somebody like Cutter Crawford who continues to give up the long ball and have some issues completing starts in strong ways. But they have a really deep bullpen now with Martin back in the fold. And then you think about if they can add once they get Liam Hendricks back, knock on wood, his recovery stays on track like it seems like it is right now. That's a pretty good bullpen where you have some really good high leverage guys. The two guys they added, Garcia and Sims, but then of course Martin, Jansen, and then Hendricks, who was an all-star closer at one point too. So like, they're set up to shorten games if they can get everybody back and healthy. Again, I think the biggest question is, can the starting pitching do their job to at least give them 5 here down the stretch and 5 good innings at the very least to get it to those guys and not tire them out in a way that ends up being detrimental at the end of the year.
Yeah, it was definitely tough because with Martin and Slayton both injured, and prior to the trade deadline, it was these same guys were running it out there every single night, and it just wasn't working because they were all exhausted because they had to be overused. So hopefully the starters can pitch deep into games, which was a big concern I had going into the season, just being able to get through a good 5, maybe 6 innings as a bonus. So that way then they can utilize these relievers in the way that they should be used. But having Martin back is going to be massive. This team definitely has a lot of momentum now that they've finally started to turn things around from their painful stretch out of the All-Star break. It seems like they're finally starting to click again. And I just love the attitude this team plays with overall. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what they do here over this next couple months. And they're really going to be tested with some of these teams that they're facing. But Joe, this was so much fun having you on, and I really do appreciate you taking the time today to speak with me about this team.
Anytime, Gabby. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen today. Don't forget to check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, also known as Sully. He is hilarious, super loud, but super passionate about baseball. If you listen to my show a lot, you've heard me do some episodes with him. Very knowledgeable about the sport. So if you want to hear more about other playoff teams down the stretch, definitely check out Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts. Like I always end the show, go Red Sox, keep the faith, and I will catch you next time.